Hello, everyone, and welcome to the U.S. Gerety Jury Insights panel. The Gerety Awards are the only awards that select the best in advertising through the perspective of the female lens. I'm Mariah Cooper, the Associate Editor of Campaign US, and I'm joined by some of this year's U.S. jury. We have an amazing group here today, so if everyone could just go around and give a brief introduction, then we can get started.
I'll go ahead and start. I'm Beth Wade. I am CMO at VMLY&R. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for hosting.
Great.
I'm Sheereen Russell, and I am SVP of Ad Sales and Inclusion Content Monetization Strategy for OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, and Discovery.
Great.
I'm Daniela Vojta. I'm Executive Director at BBDO New York. Nice to be here with you guys.
And I'm Jennifer Risi. I'm the founder and president of The Sway Effect.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it. So I guess we can just kind of dive into the work. And, I'm very curious to know for each of you, what was your favorite work that you saw and why? We can start with Jennifer, since you're.
I would say, but some of the work was some of the best work I've seen. I've judged a bunch of different campaigns over the years. And when Joe reached out to be a juror on this, just really looking at communications and advertising with a female lens, I was really excited about it because what we do at The Sway Effect is really, we put D&I at the center of everything that we do. Some of the best work that I saw, I thought, was Sick Moms versus Hard Days. I loved that campaign. I also love She Speaks, which was great. Those were gold. Another one that actually was silver, I thought was amazing also, which was Financial Fairness. And all of those campaigns really looked at how you empower women and the issues that impact women. Really looked at how do you connect with our target audience in a more authentic way, having female creatives looking to really create the world that we live in. That's the audience that they're really catering to. And one more before I forget, because there's one more I wrote down that I really liked. I really liked Happy Birthday Twitter, which I thought was extremely powerful. When I watched that, I was like, oh boy, this is one of the best things I've ever seen.
Love that. Loved Happy Birthday Twitter. Great one. Anyone else? Daniela, what about you?
Yeah, I like the work. Obviously, I like the Grand Prix winners. Everybody did, but I like the work that felt really defiant of roles of any sort of preconceived notions. I really love the spirit of the anti-corruption hackathon, the one from Prague, Czech Republic. So it was really great, and just the power of the collective power to make change and to defy the system. So I love that one. That was a Grand Prix. I also love the fun of the Romanian Rom Candy Bar, the sponsorship, the sponsor of the cancel events. I thought that was really brilliant. I have seen work they've done before, like many years ago. They just do always a great fun stunt, and I thought that was a really fun way to hijack the way the pandemic and how everybody was going from an angle of being super earnest and super emotional. They just came with a very fun, humorous way to hijack it and not spending any money.
Definitely.
I would say for me, I absolutely love the richness and the vulnerability, the pain and the triumph and Sick Kid Moms versus Hard Days. I watched it multiple times because it was pulling at my heartstrings. I emoted by crying. I talked about it with several people thereafter. And that's when I realized it really left an imprint on me. And I think part of what it is that I found so compelling, and much of what we often try to do when it comes to storytelling or long form that we're creating is really reflect the human experience with authenticity and accuracy. And so to see this, I felt like the creators had really allowed you to feel immersed in this experience of this mother and her family in a way that it created the most possible empathy, I think, that I've seen in some short form in a while. And so for me, it just stood out and has left an imprint that I still feel, quite frankly, when talking about the spot.
Definitely. It was a beautiful work.
So I would say, sure, this may not be a shock to anyone who's listening in, but the one I wrote down as well was Sick Kids. The Sick Kids Foundation work to me was just so impactful. It was heartbreaking to watch. And I think, when the words, as you said, Sheereen, it was, the empathy that you got out of that. I felt like it was so real, and it was just, whether you're a parent or not, to see how someone is having to live their day and empower through. I mean, even the small tasks like doing the laundry, but but having to persevere in every moment. It really just gave me chills, and it was one that I wanted, if I could have reached out and hugged her and the father, I would. But so it does its job, because it's going to compel you to donate. It's going to compel you to how can you help? The ultimate goal is you can help financially today. And so I think it was a fantastic piece of work that really, had results that went along with it, because it was so emotionally, it tugged at your emotions so well. And then almost a complete opposite of that, I would say, of course, Grand Prix, everything was great. But I think one that made me giggle a little bit was Keep It Real Online. And, I have a high school child, but I'll have a lot of friends who have high school children. And so the conversation over porn and what it is doing in the environment and, for these children, this made me giggle. This made me think about, do you know what your children are doing? Because that has come up in discussion, with parents that, we have similar age kids. So I thought it was an entertaining way to get that message across. And I thought the New Zealand government and the team there did a great job. So two very opposite spectrums.
Definitely. And it sounds like with all of your answers, all the work that stuck out to you was ones that were emotionally resonating in some way, whether it made you laugh or cry, whatever it may be. So for each of you, when you were judging this work, what was the criteria that was most important to you? Was it the craft? Was it the message? What were you looking for?
I'll just jump in. I would say that you kind of hit it right there. It's how it made me feel. I feel like everything that you wanted to leave a video and feeling like that made an impact on me one way or another. How did it make me feel at the end of that? And it could have been joyous. It could have been happy. It could have been, moved, sad, motivated. There had to be a feeling that you felt strong about. And so I looked for something that resonated and it hadn't left me wanting more, I would say. And then of course, results are important. That's what we're here to do. It's whether it is driving donations for a charitable organization or it is driving business for somebody. This is about making movement and business momentum on behalf of brands. And so I think that, whether that is making your brand loved or making your brand sell, I think you have to showcase that movement.
Definitely. Anyone else? Let's see, Jennifer.
Yeah. I was going to say exactly what Beth said. It's very much for me was how it made me feel, and what I also was looking at was the impact. Like a lot of these campaigns were very powerful, and you saw real tangible results from what they did. And, to me, the message is always very important, but you want to see how did it connect? How did it connect with the audience that it was targeted at? And that's what also was a huge deciding factor for me, was the campaigns themselves were so powerful. But then looking at, seeing how it resonated and how it really connected with the audience and the end user people were really targeting. That's what also made it even better for me, was seeing the fact that these campaigns actually worked.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that definitely the first thing is the idea, but you can see sometimes a really good idea that's not executed so well, right? It loses a lot, or idea that sometimes is not that good, but it's executed really well. So I think the key is to have both, right? So you have even like Sick Kids that we're all talking about. From what I understand, it was the mother is an actress, right? It's based on amalgamation of different true stories, but just the acting and that to feel so authentic and raw and real, you're so immersed in it. So I think that execution, that craft is incredible. Very differently, like the Burberry ad. it's great. I love the message, but the craft, like the energy and the choreography and everything coming together, it's just pure magic. So I think it's everything. The hackathon doesn't really have an execution. It's more of a movement, right? But that idea is so strong, and obviously the result was, that's what made it.
I also really appreciated, and I'm echoing much of the sentiment that's been shared, but when I think about Happy Birthday Twitter and the irony and what I thought would be versus the really sort of, challenging subject of in having survivors show up with authority and a sense of reclaiming their experience and their story, but also soliciting the audience to just sort of to be immersed in what happened and recognize that pain, but then the accountability that we all have as well associated with the platform and these experiences. So that for me was just eye-opening, but it also was informative at the same time because it was not something that I was aware of. So that to me felt like power in the storytelling, quite frankly.
Definitely, for sure. I think it's interesting too, in the past, more than a year with the pandemic and everything, I feel like it really shifted the way people viewed creativity. And so I was wondering, were there any specific trends that you all noticed in this year's work that you thought was particularly interesting?
I felt like the sheen, obviously there was the beauty and the richness of some of those rich campaigns that we saw, like Burberry. But what I also appreciated, I think, was the sheen and the shine that we're used to pre-pandemic. And many of them was stripped away. And there was, again, this just real, raw human experience coming through, even for Volvo and like the parenting journey. It just was like, this is real life. And at a time where you find consumers and audiences in a unique mindset and a new psyche, I think it met us where we were on many instances. And that was a through line of just authentic human experiences without just the sort of filter, if you will, for enhancement. And that I think was critical and necessary for connection.
Sure.
That's great.
I'd say some themes I saw, I kind of looked at it as there were so many different movements, which were amazing that you saw come to life. But then, you saw a lot of escapism as well. And so I thought that kind of juxtaposition between the two felt real life to me too, because I think for many of us, the last year, last 18 months, it's been difficult, right? And so, and there has been so much that we want to change in the world for the better. And so those movements speak to us because we want to make this world a better place. But that is also something that strains on your mental health. It takes a lot of energy. So I also saw a lot of the things that I think I also, adhered to were things that let me escape, that let me have fun, that let me just enjoy not having something that was pressure filled, but something that gave me an escape. So whether that was Burberry was a great example with the choreography and everything, down to some of the gaming examples, so whether it's Wendy fighting in a game or it's, the Xbox going to escape into gaming tourism, I thought those were kind of fun ways to kind of break away from the day.
What about you, Daniela?
Yeah, I think, everything everyone is saying is really great. Totally agree. I think that one trend that I'm noticing, and that is just going to increase, I think it's gaming. And I judge Candace here too. And just the amount of work around gaming is incredible. And I think it's really exciting. It is one of the highest growth category, right? Like the metaverse, like where everything is going to kind of change. And that's kind of where there's so many possibilities in there that I think we're just scratching the surface. So it's really exciting. But purely from a format and just how creativity just kind of pushes the boundaries, right? Like we used to be very rigid with categories, like you had the print, you had the TV, you had your out of home, but now we're just I don't even know how to have award shows, like how to divide everything to categories, that those lines are blurring so much. So I think gaming, and I think this is just going to keep moving a direction more and more.
Yeah, gaming's definitely a big one for sure.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I would say from my perspective, the messaging was just so powerful. I think that yes, there was lightheartedness, but from my perspective, I saw it as, looking at some of these campaigns that really focused in on culture and focused in on what's going on right now, and taking these moments of reckoning and kind of taking the issues that have plagued us for so long, whether it be about women's issues, et cetera, and really just tried to kind of, I'm not going to say capitalize is the wrong word, but almost like try to use the current conversation to kind of try to move the needle even further. I thought they were very powerful campaigns there were a lot of them that really looked at issues that we've been dealing with for a really long time, gave it a fresh look, and tried to actually go deeper and go actually to a place of really trying to shine a spotlight on issues that have been here for a long time, but almost try to push the boundary to kind of try to drive change in a new and different way.
Definitely. So another thing that I think is really important to touch upon is the fact that, not only the pandemic was going on in this past year, but there was a lot of upheaval in terms of the social climate. There was a lot going on with Black Lives Matter and Stop AAPI Hate. And, a lot of, brands were trying to hop on that trend. And they wanted to be more diverse and inclusive. And so I'm just wondering, more of a general question. I mean, do you all think, what type of progress have we made thus far in the past year? And where do we still have work left to do? Whoever wants to kick off with that one.
I would say that, on the heels of the tragic murder of Mr. George Floyd and that of Breonna Taylor, it was, we found specifically at our network that we began to become a critical partner for consideration around how brands would show up, wanting to leverage the halo and the credibility of the Oprah Winfrey Network brand, and also what the intentionality of being in service to our audience is. But at the same time, we also had to be very discerning and thoughtful about which brands we could tether ourselves to during this very critical conversation. And, I said this on a panel the other day that, it's one of those moments where I've worked for many networks, but OWN is the first brand that I've been a part of where, we're very mindful and thoughtful of the partners. And it's not just about the revenue, it's about the right revenue and the right intention, because even prior to sort of a cancel culture, there's an intentionality and integrity around the relationships for the audiences that we're in service to. And so there were a few brands that showed up and they would send over RFPs, and we were like, this is just to check a box. And it's clear that whoever even wrote the RFP is not even coming from a place of an indigenous or empathetic point of reference. There were not the right people around the table to really speak to even what the campaign, in our opinion, should reflect. And thus we had to walk away and just simply say, unless you're willing to reframe what you're asking, we're not the right partner for you. And so that was different for me. But I also, as someone who was deeply impacted by what was happening socially, also felt like we had the opportunity on the front lines of creating conversation, and uncomfortable conversation at that. And so I thought it was an opportunity for change and evolution. And I feel like brands, swung one way. I do feel like the pendulum is swinging back a little bit. I do think there's some indications, in some of the conversations I've been a part of with brands where their data is demonstrating that there's audience fatigue around and consumer fatigue around some of these conversations. And we just challenge those brands to say, perhaps that's very true. But what will you stand for, and how will you continue to support marginalized audiences who have felt they've been disserviced, and how can we help you do that? So I feel like, to answer your question in short, it was a critical and necessary conversation that happened. Some brands have shown up and stood up with integrity and intention, I think are committed. One of those great brands is Procter & Gamble. And we continue to see the things that they're doing with Widen the Screen. And it feels like it's a part of their real DNA. A few others would already started the movement, like Unilever, around the Crown Act and a conversation around Black women and celebrating their natural hair, however it grows out of their scalp, and being proud and to sort of fight and eradicate discrimination around those things. And so my hope is that there's still accountability for brands to continue to do that, and consumers, as well as industry folks like ourselves, keep said brands accountable and keep the conversation alive.
For sure, definitely. Anyone else have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think it's great. Sheereen, thanks for that. Cause I totally agree. Like you have to feel authentic. You can't feel like a trend. I love Unilever for that because the Crown Act, it's something they've been doing for so many years. One of the brands I partner with is Shea Moisture. And there's a side-by-side partnership. You know, we're always in tune with what they're doing. We're supporting each other. So 100%, like I have other clients that, you know, when that happened, we're all very passionate as creatives. We want to, you know, tackle, we want to solve. There, you know, we really, a lot of people in our team, we had a lot of stakes. So we wanted to do something. But we went to some of our brands. In some instances, we actually decided to partner with a nonprofit. So we worked with Color Change. We created a pedestal project. It's not here, but it was a great experience working with them. And we worked with a lot of great people and activists. So it needs to be authentic, or you go work with a nonprofit, right? But there are again, the world has so many issues. There is something that is gonna match your ethos, where you stand for. Like, for instance, AT&T, we're doing a campaign to help the digital divide, right? Because it's right up our gamut, right? We support, we have technology, we have the communication. So, and there is a huge problem in the country that affects everybody, right? So, and that should be a long lasting thing. It shouldn't be something that we're tackling, you know, this year. You know, if the pandemic gets better, people go back to school or to work, there's still a huge gap, regardless of technology, of access. So we can't just drop it. So everything, I think, and people are smart. People can see consumers, whether it's consumers or us judging award shows, we can tell if something is just a trend, or if it's something that's been going on for a while. Like even Procter & Gamble, like I worked on Tide, and I just saw something about Loads of Hope today. And Loads of Hope is a program that they created. They don't advertise that much, but it's basically every time there's a hurricane, there's a natural disaster, they go in and they put these trucks where they do laundry for people. And that goes from like over 10 years they've been doing this. Like, I feel like 15 years, and it's just an ongoing great thing they do. And they don't try to capitalize. They don't talk that much about it, but they're just helping. It's a great idea.
Yeah, definitely. Procter & Gamble is really paving the way on that front, I think, for sure. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Beth?
I would just say that if you move from the brands we work with, who are we as brands to work for? And so I think that is something that the last year, there is an awareness and a need for us to transform as an industry from an advertising agency perspective. And obviously that has been said multiple times. When you ask the question, how far do we have to go? I think we've just started. So, I don't see this as an end game. I see this as something that is always going to be evolving. And I think if we put, I know this isn't what you're saying, but if we try to say, okay, are we going to be done in the next 3 years? Then we're looking at it incorrectly, because this is going to be something that it's going to be a lifetime for us to make the changes we need to make. And so we have, the responsibility as leaders sitting on this call, and leaders at our agencies and our networks and everything, to start to make the change, and we continue to see it move from year to year. And so I would just say for all of us, it's, we may have, so many people did so many amazing things this year with programs, with recruiting, with everything else. We can't stop. That has to continue, and it has to be a strategic imperative and something that is on a KPI for an agency. So I just say agencies need to do and be looking themselves like we are, to continue this forward.
For sure, definitely. Definitely. Any thoughts, Jennifer, on this one?
I think, we've seen a lot of progress. I think we have a long way to go. I think there's more work to be done. I think that, I think it's great that different brands and agencies came out over the past year with commitments. I mean, we have to really see what they're doing. See how, sorry, my computer, 1 second.
No problem.
The fun of live, all of a sudden just think something just popped into my screen.
Of course.
We have to see, what the impact is. Like, let's really set metrics and stuff. One of the things that one of my clients is the 4As, and the 4As last year put together, for the first time ever, they put together a survey which really looked across the industry of where different agencies are from a D&I perspective. And they're going to annually measure as an industry what the progress looks like. I mean, that's exactly what needs to happen, because I think there's a lot of, as I said before, there was a lot of commitments that were made, but some of it was also statements, some of it was real, some of it wasn't. And I think that, as someone said earlier, we need to, as leaders on this panel and leaders in the industry, need to continue to challenge the norms. I mean, one of the things that I do with our clients every day, I mean, most of my clients are CEOs of big companies, is I really sit with them and I really help challenge them as to, how do we put D&I at the center of everything that they do from a business strategy perspective? So I think there's a lot of great intention. I think we just have to keep folks accountable to what needs to really be done.
Definitely. No, you all made a lot of really, really great points. Definitely, for sure. Well, as we come to the end of our time here, I just have kind of one last question for you guys. What is kind of your final thoughts on this whole experience? Because I think that it is just such an amazing thing to have a bunch of really powerful, wonderful women with amazing opinions come together and, judge the work. That's something you don't really see that often. So what are your final thoughts on the whole experience, or just even the work in general?
I have one final thought, and that is, I wish I would have had the opportunity to meet with all of these wonderful ladies to actually go through the work together. And we weren't able to do that this year. And I think what I missed out on is meeting wonderful women, but also being able to hear different perspectives as we looked at the work, because, I think for us to make creative shine, you have to have different perspectives looking at it, and you have to share what is actually resonating with you. And so I feel like that's something that I hope for next year's jury, they're able to get together, they're able to have those conversations and really think about, what made something impactful to others. So, but it's been lovely to be on this call today and hear from each of you. So thank you.
Great. Anybody else?
I thought it was really inspiring. I mean, when Joe reached out, I think it was over a year ago, and said he wanted me to be involved in this with the awards, I thought it was amazing. First of all, the whole idea of the awards in general is something our industry needs, and then doing it with amazing kick-ass women like we have on this panel and a broader group all over the world. I think that's exactly what needs to be done to really help continue to drive our industry forward. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot from the work. Like Beth, I wish we all were able to be together in the room together, but it was some of the best work I've seen in a really long time.
Awesome.
Yeah, I thought the work was really great. It's interesting to me. There are things that are like unanimous that everybody will agree. Like you look at an ad, like everybody in the room is gonna say that's a great ad. I love when there is a tension, and that, like you're saying, Beth, like in a jury where I've been in situations where it's split against a gender line. So we had 8 people with 4 women, 4 men, and in that case it was actually I think it was 5 men and 4 women. So we actually lost a discussion by number because we're outnumbered by the man. But it was interesting because and we were discussing, it just happened because that's where we are with this gender split unevenly. So we made this point, like I'm a strong believer that you should at least have 50-50, right? And you can have discussions, not to say that all the women think the same way or all the men think the same way, but I think it's a great experience to have a jury with women and see, because it's funny because I was in a different jury where the same work, the Lebanese national anthem, all in our newspaper, that was a gold, that didn't get a Grand Prix. And there were people in my jury that really wanted it to be a Grand Prix. So, and it didn't. So it's the nuance here that you see, maybe if you compare the results here with other shows, you can kind of see that it's sometimes just going from a gold to a Grand Prix or from a shortlist to a bronze, that I find really interesting. So great experience. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Are you mute?
Oh, I think you're on mute.
I would just say I echo all the shared sentiments, and I think one of the beautiful things about, to Beth's earlier point, when we're able to be together and share and collaborate, like rich things ensue. And I do wish that I would have the luxury of being in the same space with these brilliant women and just building relationship and community around these conversations. But I do think the spirit of these awards and the honorees and some of the things that we've identified become criteria for how brands and marketers think about going forward. That authenticity, the accuracy, the reflection of the real human experience, but then escapism and joy and delight and a little bit of bliss, because it feels like that's also what we also need to sort of escape the realities of what we're experiencing right now. And I think just the relevancy and the timeliness of just meeting the audiences where they are, subject to what's happening in their larger environments, becomes the continued critical factor for how brands and marketers show up in their stories.
For sure, definitely. Amazing. Well, we're at the end of our time. Unfortunately, I'm kind of sad because this is such a great conversation. I appreciate all of your time and your great opinions and for participating in this. And thank you to everyone else who was tuning into this wonderful discussion as well. And have a great afternoon.